Welcome to our Mysteries of the Library Revealed webinar on organization and storage. I'm Ann Rojas, and with me tonight is Andrea Lemieux. Before we get started, I'd like to put in a plug for our upcoming webinars in this series. Mysteries of the Library Revealed is a monthly series on different library topics. It's on the third Monday of the month at 8:30 in the evening, Eastern US time. And our upcoming webinars are going to be on ScholarWorks in April. We're going to give a library tour in May. And we have a citation management software webinar coming up in June. So if you're interested in more webinars in the series, be sure and register. If you're registered for a webinar, you'll be sent an email with a link to the recording afterward, a day or two later. So just be sure and register for anything that interests you. So quick overview, you're going to find all kinds of stuff in your searches. Hopefully we don't have to tell you that getting organized is going to save you lots of time down the road as you're finding all of your articles and books. It only takes a little bit of time up front to save time down the road. The questions really are, what are your options and what is going to work best for you? And we like to encourage you to try different things. Don't be afraid to try things out, but do figure out what works for you and stick with it. You can use really as much technology as you're comfortable with. Some people like to print everything out. Others like to save to their hard drive, and some like to save in the cloud. So you can do any of those things that you feel comfortable with. You want to keep track of what you find as you go. That's pretty obvious, but you also want to keep track of your searches, especially if you're working on a big project, dissertation, or really any big project. Big projects and dissertations take a lot of research, and you'll want to keep track so that you don't lose your way. We are going to mention citation management software at the end, and we encourage you to explore those resources so you can figure out if you want to attend the Mysteries webinar on that in June. So as you're looking to exploring to see what you want to do of how you're going to save things, keeping track is going to save your time and avoid frustration. Recreating that perfect results list that you got last weekend or last month or last term can be really frustrating if you don't write it down. So that's one thing. And then trying to find downloaded articles because you don't remember where you saved them or you're saving them in too many different places. That can be a big problem too. And we also like to remind people to back everything up. No matter what method you use, you want to back it up. Just as an aside, I used to work at a brick and mortar library where we had a box of flash drives behind the reference desk. People would come in looking for their life's work, which they had forgotten in the computer at the library. And I know flash drives aren't so common now, but the same principle applies. If you like to print things off, that's fine. Have them filed somewhere electronically. If you keep everything on your hard drive, that's fine too. But consider a cloud backup in case your computer crashes, gets lost, or stolen. Doctoral students who are organized and systematic about saving their searches and their articles, anything that you found and read during coursework, can oftentimes find a gap that bubbles up to the surface when you review that information. So that can be a great way to find a workable topic for your capstone project. That's another thing to keep in mind. So let's start by talking about databases and vendors and Thoreau and other library lingo. Databases are what we usually talk about. Some people get that confused with vendors. Our most commonly used vendors, some of them are EBSCO, ProQuest, and Sage. So each of those can contain one or more databases within the platform. And I'm just going to go out here to the website to show you what those look like. For instance, here you can see this is an EBSCO database, and here you can see this is a ProQuest database, and this is what Sage looks like. And each of them has really the same functionality. They just look a little bit different on the surface. When you're looking to see what databases are offered, there's usually a way to look at that when you're in here. In EBSCO, you can look here for choose databases, and you'd get a full list. This will have some, hopefully, that people are already familiar with. If it'll ever finish loading. Some that you might be familiar with are Academic Search Complete, Business Search Complete, PsycInfo, and Education Source. So some are specific to disciplines, to particular subject areas, and some are multidisciplinary. Sorry, I don't know why that's not loading. I'm going to just X out of that. We'll see if it works in ProQuest. Here I'm in ProQuest Central, and that will give you a list again of different database offerings. So you can go into the dissertations from here, you can go into ebooks, and you can go into different article databases. ProQuest Central happens to search just about all of them. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind. When you're working with Ask a Librarian or working in appointments with librarians, we sometimes will ask you which databases you've been in. And just so that you know, when you tell us you've been in EBSCO, that doesn't give us the information that we need. So just kind of wanted to highlight that. So how do you get to the different databases? There are different entry points, but we do have from the library homepage a databases A to Z. And that can be one of the ways that you get into a full list. And to get ideas of where you want to go, you can look by name if your instructor has named something, but you can also search by subject to see what subject areas we have different databases in, or you can search by type if you're looking for books, conferences, dissertations, journal articles. And you can search by vendors too, not that I think very many people are going to do that, but just in case, it's available there. So one thing that people often ask is where to start. They're not sure where to start, and that's fair. You can't always know where you need to start. So we do have a search box on the main page that searches thorough, and this is a search tool that is offered specifically to Walden Library users, and it searches not all of the collection, but well over half of the collection, so it casts a really wide net. And this can be a good way to figure out where you should be going. It's one of the ways that you can try that. So if you're looking at library skills and academic success, and I do want to mention that when you're using the search box, it looks like it's a Google box, but it doesn't really work like Google. So you don't want to put in your whole sentence or question. You just want to put in your main ideas. So if I search for library skills and academic success, it's going to give me a list of results. And I can look to see in the results, this one came from Eric, another one from Eric, all kinds of them from Eric. Let's see if something else comes up. Here, this one came from Education Source. If you don't want to look individually at the articles, you can look in this panel on the left-hand side, a blue shaded area. There's a databases option, and you can click on that and see which databases the majority of the articles came from. And so you can go into specific databases or get ideas of specific databases based on that. Okay, and then another way that you can check to see what might be a suggested place to go is to look under subject resources. When you click on select a subject, you can see that these different subject areas align with our different programs. So if we were to go into psychology, for instance, you can see Andrea's greeting us there. And there's a similar search box on the psychology research page. And this works really very similarly to the other Homepage, you can search, for instance, for cultural sensitivity and mental health and search on that. And this will give you the same interface, and you have the same option to look and see, you know, a lot of these come from PsycInfo, or you can look over on the left-hand side and click on databases to see where they're coming from. And here, PsycInfo is a clear top choice. And then the other thing that you can do is just go into psychology databases, click on that bar, and that will give you a list of databases that are suggested for psychology topics. And I should also mention that this particular search box doesn't search the same thing as Thoreau. It's not as much as Thoreau. It's searching a curated list of databases that are psychology and psychology-related topics. So remember that getting to know your research page can be really helpful. It's a super organized way to find your way to resources. Librarians like to keep things tidy, and we like to help students, so take a look and get to know your research page so that you can find out what resources we recommend, and you can always use Ask a Librarian if you have questions as well. Would there be any other questions that have popped up, Andrea, that I can answer before I pass it over to you?
I think we're all set for right now. Just some audio and handout questions that we seem to have remedied.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So let me know, Anne, if you will, that you're seeing the PowerPoint that has the full text and basic organization storage slide up.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So now that we've covered where and how you'll be searching in the library, let's talk about how to access full text articles and a few basic ways that you can save and organize them. So let's go ahead and do a search in the psychology database PsycInfo, and we'll talk about the different options for full text you'll see in your results list. So I like to access databases by subject, so I'm going to go into the subject resources box, and in the drop-down menu, I'm going to go ahead and click on psychology. And as Anne had explained, I'm going to go into psychology databases, and then I'll see PsycInfo, which is one of the go-to databases for psychology. So this is a go-to search that I use for students often. So I'm going to do a search for drug abuse or substance abuse or addiction that also talks about high school students and that also talks about prevention. So we're going to set up a few limiters. I'm going to uncheck full text. I'm going to check peer review. And I think just to see what's been going on in this subject for the last 10 years, I'm going to limit to 2009. So I'm going to go ahead and click search. So let's look at our results list. The most common option you'll see to access the full text is a PDF full text link here. You can either access it from the results page, or if you click on the article title, it brings you into what we call the article record, which is information about the article itself, publication information, the abstract, that kind of thing. So on the left, you'll see that you can also access the PDF full text there as well. Just to know that when you see PDF, you often see HTML next to it, and that's just another way to access the full text. So I wouldn't worry too much about that at this point. It's rare that you see HTML all by itself. So really quickly, another way that we access full text is the Find It Walden button. That means that the full text of this particular article actually lives in another database. So all the Find It Walden button is going to do is going to bring you into another database where you can access the full text. Sometimes it brings you right to the full text, and sometimes it prompts you to choose a database that then brings you to the full text. So in this instance, when I click on it, it's telling me that the article is in EBSCO Open Access Journals. And so I click on the link. And now since I'm in another database, it looks a lot different, but all you have to do is kind of scan what you're looking at and just look for a PDF link, and you'll see one right over here on the right-hand side. So those are some of the options of how we access the full text. So let's go back to our results list. Now that we know how to access the full text, we need to save it somewhere. So one of the most basic ways to save articles is to save it physically to your computer. So if I'm working on a final project or dissertation research, I can simply set up folders on my computer and save them there. So in this case, actually, let me do this really quickly. If I go to my desktop, I can right-click, create a folder, and I am going to create a folder that says drug abuse and prevention. And I'm also going to do some searches later about drug abuse and treatment. So I'm going to make one for drug abuse and treatment as well. So now when I go back into my results list and I click on the PDF full text.
Andrea, I'm still seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, the PowerPoint. Okay, let me see if I can get this to. Can you see the database now? The full text?
Yeah, the PDF.
Okay, perfect. So you might have missed, because I was playing around with my screen a little bit, all I did was create on my desktop 2 folders that said drug abuse and prevention and drug abuse and treatment. So once I click on the PDF link, I am going to see this download button right here. So typically what I do is I highlight the article title, and I right click and I copy the article title so I can name the file. So when I click the download button, which usually looks like a down pointing arrow, it's going to simply open up a save option for my computer. So I'm going to paste the article title, and then I'm going to look for the folder that I just created, which is drug abuse and treatment. I'm going to click on that, and now I've saved the article to that folder. Now you can do this for all of your articles, and then as long as you set up your folders in advance, you keep them organized, you'll know that they are physically on your computer. The issue becomes if you're using another computer. So if you're visiting family or you're at work and you wanted to access the article, if you save them on your computer, there's not going to be a way for you to access them in another location. So that's why we often recommend to students to save them in the cloud. And what that means is you're simply saving your information on someone else's server. So it might be Google's, it might be Microsoft's, it might actually be Walden's. So it just really depends. What's a neat function in our databases is that if you look over here to the right-hand side, there's a little icon for Google Drive. If you click on that and you have a Google Drive account, you can sign right into Google Drive and save everything in the cloud. So you can save it to your desktop and you can save it in the cloud as well, or you can use this as a backup option. Now, I'm not going to sign in and go through the steps on how to do this, but you can certainly click on this option and play around with it and see if this is going to suit your needs. But just know that if you use Google, once you sign into Google, you'll see that you'll be able to go to Google Drive and all your documents are going to be there. Another popular tool is Microsoft OneDrive. So if I simply type in OneDrive in Google, I'll see the option for it. It's the first result in my list. Microsoft OneDrive is simply a similar platform to Google Drive, except it's through Microsoft. So you're saving all your documents on Microsoft servers. So again, just like Google, you need to set up a separate account in Microsoft, and all of this is free. Google Drive is free, Microsoft OneDrive is free. These are just options in ways to store your information. So just know some of the basics are save it to your computer, which you need to physically be at to access, or you can save it to the cloud. And 2 of the most common options are Google Drive and Microsoft Drive. So if you want to explore those other 2, I just recommend searching for them on Google, setting up an account, and playing around with saving those documents there. Now I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint really quickly. Just a quick note that this was a search in EBSCO, so the process looks the same if you are in EBSCO databases. If you are in ProQuest databases, the same functionality is going to be there, but just keep in mind that the buttons might be in a different place, they might be labeled a little differently, so just know that you're going to have to look around for those. And just a note on technical support, that it's really inevitable that you're going to need technical support at some point. And so once you've looked through our webinars and the material that we have on the library website, excuse me, know that your next stop is really student support. So if you're having problems with your computer, excuse me, or with PDFs, just know that student support is really the option that you want to check out. So let's talk about saving to databases. We've talked about saving individual articles. Now let's look at some options of where we can save articles, but we can also save our database searches as well. So I am going to go ahead and go back to our search results. So we can see all of our search results here. Now, an option is that we can literally save the articles and this search in EBSCO itself. And just as a reminder that I know that this is an EBSCO database because the logo is over here on the left-hand side. For ProQuest databases, you'll see ProQuest over here. And then the database that we're searching is PsycInfo. So this is really a useful feature, saving in the databases, but in full disclosure, it can be super tricky to use. So I'm going to point out some things that you really should keep in mind if you want to save to the databases. So the first and most important thing to remember is that you need to set up a separate account to save your searches, and it's different from your Walden account. If you don't sign in before you search, you're going to lose any of your searches or articles that you think you might have saved. So just know, again, as a reminder that this is in EBSCO databases. If you wanted to do this in ProQuest, you have to set up a different account, but it works throughout all ProQuest databases and all EBSCO databases. So since we're in PsycInfo, let's look at how this looks in EBSCO. So I'm simply going to go up to the top of the screen in the menu that says sign in. And if you have already set up an account in the past, you can sign in, but you'll have to look a little bit closely at the bottom where it says create one now if you've not set up an account. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And all you have to do is fill out the form and click continue. And it has a few more screens for you to fill out. And then you have created a separate EBSCO account. Now I already have one set up, so I'm going to go ahead and sign in. I just used my Walden email address, and then I just set up a separate password for that. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. A few things to look for once you've signed in to know that you are signed in. Your name is usually at the top corner. You'll have the sign out button, so you know that you're in. Can't sign out unless you already have signed in. And then over on the left, you'll see this little my symbol. So it just says my EBSCO host. So now we know that we're in my account. So if I wanted to save some articles, all I need to do is click on a little folder here up to the right of each article, and it has a little plus sign on it. So if these first three are relevant to my search, I'm going to go ahead and click on the folder. And now that they've turned yellow, I know that I have saved them. So now looking around, you're probably wondering, well, where did these articles get saved to? So again, look up in the menu, and you'll see that the folder now has a little piece of paper sticking out of it. So now I have items saved there. So if I click on folder, I'll see all three of my articles listed here. Now you can do that for all your searches, but remember I said I'm going to do a search later on about, not about prevention, but treatment. So I want to put all of these articles in a folder that says prevention. So I am going to go over here to the left-hand side, and under my custom, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name it Drug Abuse and Prevention. and then I'm going to save that folder. So now I can see that this folder is created over here on the left, and I'm going to go ahead and select everything that I've saved so far. I'll see this button over here that says Move To, and then I'm just going to go ahead and select Drug Use and Prevention. So now it's no longer over here on the left-hand side under Articles, it's in my folder Drug Use and Prevention. Now I can create a new folder that says, oh, don't want that, Drug Use and Treatment, for when I do another search, I can just automatically save those in the folder. Now I did mention that we can also save searches. So I'm going to go back to my search screen. Now, if I look at this and I say, wow, there's 322 results, I'm not going to have time to go through 322 results right now. So if I click on search history, it's going to show me all the different searches that I've done so far. Well, I've only done this one, drug abuse and substance abuse, high school students and prevention. So I want to save this search for later. So I'm going to go ahead and click on select this search. And then I'm going to go ahead up to this button and click on Save Searches. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, Drug Use and Prevention, and I'll put search on the end of it. Actually, I'm going to tell the database that I'm searching in Psych Info, so I know that that search is here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. So now I'm back in my folder, and I can see under Saved Searches that I have this search. Well, again, I can move this into my drug use and prevention folder. And now I can see here on the lower left that I have 3 articles saved and 1 search. If I go back to Save Searches, I click here, and then I can retrieve the results, and then I can see my original 322 results, or I can rerun the search if I want to see if there's any additional results. So I just want to make a note really quick. We have a little bit more information to cover, and it's really, I think, interesting. So if you need to sign off because you've only allocated 30 minutes of your night to the webinar, feel free to do that. Again, in the next day, you're going to be receiving an email that has a link to the recording, so you can finish watching the recording when you have time. So feel free if you need to sign off to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and finish covering the rest of the slides. Okay, so I just wanted to, let's go back to our search results, or our search screen. So now we have some information in our folder in Psych Info. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I'm no longer signed in to Psych Info, and I'm going to go back to the library homepage. Now, remember I said this works in all EBSCO databases. When I go to select a subject, and I click on education, since my topic also sort of covers education as well, I'm going to go ahead and click on education databases, and I'm going to do the same search in education source. Now, when I'm in education source, you'll see this at the top, but this is also an EBSCO database. So if I do the same search, I'm going to uncheck full text, check peer review, and I'm going to search from 2009 forward and see what happens. I get 184 articles in this particular database because it's more education focused. Well, again, I can save my articles and searches in the same account. So I'm going to go ahead and select these 3. And I also want to save this search because I'm not going to be able to look at 184 right now because we're actually at time. So I'm going to go ahead and click Search History. I see my 1 search here, so I'm going to click on the box and Save Searches. Oh, and this is actually a good example. I never actually signed in again, so it's actually prompting me to sign in. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to name my search again, but this time I'm going to put education source at the end of it so I can tell my searches apart. Now, let's see, this is actually a really good example. It actually, because I signed in quickly enough, it did save, it looks like those 3 articles from Education Source. So I'm lucky. It can be a little glitchy and not save it if you didn't sign in. And it also has my saved searches. So if I want, I can move these over to drug use and prevention, and I can move this search over to the same folder as well. So now when I look down here in drug use and prevention, I have 6 articles and 2 searches, my search in Education Source and my search in PsycInfo. So know that that's a slightly more sophisticated way of searching and saving your information. Was there any questions on that, Anne, as far as saving in databases that I can cover?
I think I've answered the questions. There were some questions about saving to OneDrive, and I was saying that you have to do that manually. And then there's some Zotero questions. So I'm just going to put a link to the guide.
Perfect. And like I said, we're going to cover that in the next couple of slides. So again, if you have to leave, that's absolutely fine. You'll receive a link and then you can finish watching the webinar when you have some time. So let's talk about, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit. So we've talked about some basic saving options and then some more advanced saving options. So you can save those in either on your computer in the cloud, or you can save them in the databases themselves. So let's talk about saving. Let's talk about organizing your overall search strategy. So the tools I'm going to talk about can be really helpful for final projects, and they're actually really indispensable for dissertation research. So the first one is called a search log, and that's the image over here on the left-hand side. So I'm actually going to go to the website and show you how to find that search log, but just know that it's also linked in the PowerPoint. So in this top search box, if I click the button Search Everything and I type in search log, it's going to give me the quick answers results here in the middle of the page. The first one is, what is a search log or matrix? So it's pretty much an FAQ database that we're looking at. So when I click on this, it has a table that has a list, a column for database, a column for search terms, one for results, and one's for notes. So what this does is that you can track which databases that you've searched, your search terms, results, and notes. So for final projects, it can be a really great tool to remind you of where you searched and what you found. But just know for dissertation level research, this is really the only tool that will ensure that you've done a systematic and comprehensive search of your dissertation topic. So this is going to capture the information that you're eventually going to use for your premise, prospectus, and proposal. So that's tracking the database searches. So let's talk about how can we organize our actual articles. Well, in this same FAQ at the bottom, there is a link to the literature review matrix. It's this last link in the list. And then it will kind of give you a few more links that you can follow. And then we can open one up, and I'm going to show you here an example. So another way to organize your articles and to analyze them is to create a table and list your articles individually. So in this way, you can compare, maybe you want to track the theoretical concepts that they've used or frameworks, the methodology, implications for future research, those kinds of things in articles, and compare them. So just know that the literature review matrix is a way to track those. Okay, so any questions on why you might want to use a search log or a literature review matrix? So this is more about organizing your search and your articles. So we've talked about storing, and now we've talked a little bit about how to organize them.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, great. So we're going to quickly talk about citation management software because that's always really popular. But really what we're going to do tonight is just kind of talk about it generally. So citation management software does a little bit of everything. It saves your articles and it also helps you organize them as well. So it kind of does two things that none of the other things we talked about actually do. Um, so let me, okay. So primarily citation management software is used for doctoral level students on dissertation research, but really anybody can use it to keep track of and organize articles. I personally use it to store professional reading that I'm doing or to kind of bookmark reading that I want to do in the future, or if I'm researching a topic for work, or maybe I'm taking a professional development class and I want to save the citations to those things. So I'll do that in citation management software. So we're going to take a really quick look at what that looks like. So Zotero is one of the free software programs that we do a little bit of instruction on in the library. And this is their website, but it has a really good graphic of what the software looks like. So really, this program allows you to organize your research into folders and assign them individual tags so that you can analyze them and sort them in two different ways. So it kind of does the same thing that the Writing Center's literature review matrix does in a way. So here on the left, you'll see you can sort your articles into folders, and then you can do a second level of organization here at the bottom and then tag each article with different keywords like competition, 19th century, acclimatization, any of those things to kind of do a second level of organization. In the middle screen, you see all of the journals that you've saved or possibly books or videos. And then you can see that they have an article highlighted, and below it you can access the full text, so it's imported the full text. And then you can see the citation management, or I'm sorry, the citation information here on the right-hand side. So it captures all of that information for you. This is giving you a visual of the software that you can download to your computer, but you can also create an online account and access your articles that way. What's great about this particular program is that it syncs between the two. And so you can primarily work off of your computer and save them there. And then all you do is sync it to the online account. And so if you're at work or if you're at residency, you can access all of those articles as well. So let me go back to the PowerPoint really quickly. So here in the library, we provide some introductory instruction on how to use Zotero. There's another free citation management program called Mendeley, and a lot of students use a program called EndNote, and that costs money, and so we don't do much instruction on EndNote here in the library. So just know that there's a little bit of a learning curve to using any citation management software. So we're not going to go any deeper into this tonight because that's really beyond the scope of what we can accomplish. But just know that we do have a webinar that discusses the advantages and disadvantages of each program and kind of gives you some guidance on what you might look for when you choose a program. So just keep in mind that these are here for you if you're interested in citation management software. But once you've watched our webinars and used our guides, if you need any technical support for any of these programs, you really have to go to the developer's webpage and use their forums and FAQs to kind of problem solve from there, because we don't really provide in-depth technical support for any of these programs. Just enough to get you started so you can get in there and use it and then be able to use the forums on the different programs' websites. And Anne mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that we have another live webinar for citation management software in June, but we also have recorded webinars that you can use in the meantime and look through any of these links that are in the PowerPoint. So that's a little bit about what citation management software is. So if you kind of think of an overview of what we covered tonight, we started really basic from saving to your computer, a little bit more advanced, saving to the cloud and saving in databases. We talked about organizing our searches using a search log, as well as a literature review matrix for organizing articles. And then lastly, citation management software that talks about a little bit of all of those different functionality of all the different things that we talked about previously. So really quickly, the last slide has just some things for references for you to get help if you still need help after the webinar. So the first thing is quick answers, and I showed you that a little bit earlier when we looked at the search log. It's just a database of FAQs. Ask a librarian is an option on all of our web pages. You can email us or chat with us. You can leave us a phone message, but we email back all of our responses, so keep that in mind. This webinar is going to be recorded. You can also look at all of our upcoming webinars. And then we have lots of library skills guides, and that includes our guides on Zotero and Mendeley, as well as how to access full text and a lot of the different topics that we talked about tonight. So that is a really quick overview of all the different tools that are available to you to stay organized and to store your research. So is there any final questions that we have before we end the webinar tonight?
No, I think that we got it covered.
Okay, great. So everybody have a great night. Again, you can download the PowerPoint. You will be getting a link to the recording, and we hope to hear from you in Ask a Librarian and in some of our upcoming webinars. So have a good night.